First, let's break bread with Shawn Gumataotao of the That's It, That's All podcast. Sean, I know you quietly dropped a new episode last week, right?
Yes, I did. It was been a little bit busy, so it was some random thoughts that were kind of between what was happening in the news and life. So I figured spend the podcast to kind of discuss it. And I'll tell you, there were very three things. It was one on what's happening with the war claims issue with the Guam legislature, life in general, that it is not too shabby, and some business stuff as we're doing a lot of work in these COVID times, and the importance of customer service in that. So it was just kind of a random thoughts podcast, and it was always a lot of fun to do it. And I got to say, if when you listen, it's more of like, wow, where's he at today? And that's where I was at when I was writing that podcast.
Well, hey, we all have our days when we're all over the place, and those come pretty frequently during this pandemic. Sean, I wanted to ask you, when you talk about business, right? So the Local Employers Assistance Program, the LEAP bill, what are your thoughts on that? As I know you know the situation, just some real quick facts. The governor has agreed to provide $25 million in ARP funding. But there's a bill here, and the lobby is very strong with a lot of the tourism-related businesses. And this bill would shake down the general fund for another $25 million, right? So, and I don't know if you saw a session yesterday, but not going as smoothly as I think some people thought it would.
Yeah, I was kind of hearing we were listening to Mary just a couple of days ago about the importance of it and getting people backed, to back it. The business community is looking for a response from the government, and obviously with the governor being able to control most of these ARP funds, they were hoping to get that, but also getting it a bit sooner. I mean, I know Mary was very polite about her interaction with the legislature, and actually and was fair, because she said they were very responsive. But for all of us, this is an issue, or for business owners, the federal government is doing their part. We fell through the cracks in some programs, like the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, but this local funding program needs to have been done, and probably done a bit sooner. And I've been saying on this program, the best way to get the island's economy going is to reopen. And that is going to be the biggest thing that needs to be done right away. Yes, getting grants and loans are great, but reopening and getting people back and life to some level of normalcy is kind of a big deal too.
I wanted to ask just we had a laundry list, a couple things here. So I know that you were the former communications director under Governor Felix Camacho. I wanted to ask like a protocol question.
Sure.
So we recently, yesterday, we found out the lieutenant governor is off island. He's at this, there's some like conference in Texas. It's like a defense contractors type of conference.
Right.
Anyway, we were all surprised by it, because I remember, for the most part, you would find out when your top two traveled before they traveled, right? I mean, it's just pretty standard. Hey, Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio is heading out to this conference, and who's it, what's it, or whatever. Or, hey, the governor's going to D.C., for whatever, right? And so this is the second trip Lieutenant Governor Josh has taken. And I want to say the last month he went over to the UN in New York. And again, we didn't hear about that until he was actually in New York. So from a protocol standpoint, is it normal to kind of announce these trips to the public, whether or not they're funded publicly?
Well, the protocol guide is silent on to how the transportation of the lieutenant governor, or and the governor and that for that matter. But the public law does say that when one is missing, that there's someone that's going to be in their stead, right. Hence the Speaker of the Guam legislature. So generally speaking, the process would be they're going to go, they'll send a memo to all the agencies and a CC to the Guam legislature that the lieutenant governor is traveling to wherever, or the governor's traveling wherever. Then that would basically elevate the Speaker of the Guam legislature is a part of the executive branch. This is more for continuity. And so that's primarily what it's for. What they do off island, where they're at, that's fine and dandy. I think People can argue the importance of that defense communities conference.
Let me read it off, Shawn.
But process it's really not that big of a deal that it should be.
Right. So Lieutenant Governor, this is from KUAV News, by the way, of course. Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenori, along with Verita Bosnia, making their way to San Antonio, Texas, to attend the Installation Innovation Forum 2021. Toposny is the executive director for the Community Defense Liaison Office. It's fancy renaming for the military buildup people. According to the forum website for this forum, it'll feature top leaders and subject matter experts from the DoD, the services and communities and industry. The featured sessions will dive into top key issues facing installations and military families and explore the innovative efforts underway across the country to address them. The forum's from November 1st to 3rd. According to Adelup, Lieutenant Governor will be returning on Friday, and travel was funded by the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. KUAM did reach out to Speaker Therese Terlahi, who, get this, had no idea she was acting Lieutenant Governor. And I think this happened the last trip, too. So there is actually a protocol where Adelup is supposed to say, hey, everybody, LT's going on a trip.
Yeah, it's a process, and it's a memo from the governor of Guam saying, here's what's happening. Just so there's more, again, it goes back to continuity of government. If something happens, obviously the legislature is part of that in the entire chain. If something would happen, again, to the lieutenant governor, the governor of Guam. So, yeah, it's more continuity.
Right. So, I mean, that's that part, right? But what about just informing the public?
Maybe just not being quick enough. Sometimes they feel that they're very busy, and some of those things are they're just errors, and they should really just spend more time to be, better prepared for those things. That's all.
Plan ahead, you mean?
Absolutely. And we should be doing it better and faster because of what's happening in COVID.
Right on. Well, Shawn, thanks for stopping by. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we let you go?
Oh, yes. And so just a reminder for everyone, you can listen to the That's It, That's All podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Amazon Music. And it's also on the Pandora and the iHeartRadio app. Obviously, Chris and Jason, we're very happy to be part of the KWM Podcast Network. And we really do appreciate the amount of support, and also it's reaching a lot of people. I think most of the listeners now are, they're in Guam, but almost 90% of the listeners are across the country and the globe. So we're really appreciative. I think it's now in 12 countries where the podcast is being listened to.
For
so
you,
it's been absolutely a bonus.
You know, it's a really cool way to listen to Shawn's podcast or any of the podcasts like on our network. If you actually have like one of your smart speakers in your kitchen, like saying you're getting ready for dinner, and mute your smart speakers now if you're listening to us, guys. You say like, Alexa, listen to That's It, That's All podcast on Spotify, and then it'll bring it up right there while you're cooking. Don't mess around with the volume and everything like that.
Fancy Jason.
Yeah.
Look at the Jason over here.
And Shawn's podcasts are condensed. No, Shawn's podcasts are condensed enough and everything like that.
Yeah.
That while you're on the drive to work, while you're picking up the kids, while you're making dinner and everything like that, it's an entire conversation. And I know these things because I only had to sacrifice my sanity and my social life. So it's a fair trade to get cool stuff from Shawn.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Well, again, thanks for having us on the podcast network. And if you haven't listened to the programs on the podcast network, folks, I would strongly recommend to do this. Some great programming, and all of it originating in Guam and with such a great Micronesian feel. So I would just strongly recommend, if you're in a podcast, check it out.
Thank you, Shawn.
All right, guys, have a great day.
You too, my friend. Bro. There you go, Shawn Gumataotao. That's it. That's all. Podcast 709. Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. It's pretty cool podcast network we got going on here. We just dropped a new episode of Talks with Toss last Friday, so check that out. Of course, there's the Hoffa Days podcast with Glenn and Josh.